Now, as we enter the hard section of this calculator section, where we're in the back third of the multiple choice questions, and we should expect to be tricked and to get confused here, we see that one of the ways that the SAT tries to confuse us is they test something that we know very, very well in a way that disguises it so we don't even know that they're testing it. So let me show you what I mean here. The question itself is pretty straightforward. Which of the following is the best interpretation of the number 3.39 in the context of the problem? And we have a very long, complicated, scary-looking story here, and it seems like there's a lot of information to sort through, but 3.39 is in this equation. So let's use our get back to basics strategy here. What is this equation? It's a line. We know it's a line because if we look at the graph, it's also a line, but more importantly, y equals mx plus b perfectly matches this equation, 3.39x plus 46.89. So if they're looking at the 3.39, they're clearly asking us for the slope. So we're just being asked about the slope of this line. So when we have a story on top of a line, we sometimes see other words that we might, that might clue us into slope. They don't usually use the word slope, but they do use other words. They use words like rate. They use words like change. Sometimes they'll use words like increase or decrease. So as we answer this question, we're looking for those kinds of words in the choices because those are clues that we're talking about the slope. So choice A, the amount of plastic in billions of pounds produced in the United States during the year 1985. That doesn't sound like a rate. That doesn't sound like an increase. That sounds like one particular point, 1985. And if we go to the graph, since it says years since 1985, we know what that point is. It is the y-intercept, which is another important part of the equation, right? In this case, that's the 46.89, but that's not what they're asking for. So sometimes they might ask for that. That's the starting point, but not in this particular case. Choice B, the number of years it took the United States to produce 1 billion pounds of plastic. I have no idea where that's coming from. That seems kind of random. 1 billion pounds is not on here at all, right? All the numbers along the y-axis are much, much greater than 1 billion. And more important, that does not sound like a change. That sounds like a lump sum. And so I'm not looking for a particular point. I'm looking for the rate of change over time. So this is just kind of a random thing. C, the average annual plastic production in billions of pounds in the United States from 1985 to 2003. Well, that might be true, right? I mean, average, annual, this sounds like they're talking per year. This kind of sounds like a slope. But I'm not going to just pick it. I need to read D and see if it also talks about slope. And sure enough, they use one of our key words, the average annual increase in billions of pounds of plastic produced per year in the United States from 1985 to 2003. So it's remarkably similar to choice C. Very similar. And if I were confused, because I know that words like increase tend to signify that I'm talking about slope, just based on that, just based on my past experience with these terms, I would pick D. And that's the answer here. But I think it's worth explaining why C is wrong. Let's look at that again. What does it actually say? The average annual plastic production in billions of pounds in the United States from 1985 to 2003, meaning that 3.39 would be the amount of plastic produced each year. But if we look at the graph, look at all the points. The points tell us the amount of plastic produced. Right? Amount of plastic produced. And notice where those points are. They're all greater than 40,000. So 3.39 is not the right amount. It's 40 billion rather. Sorry, 3.39 billion isn't right because look at all the points. They're at 40 billion or more. So the difference between C and D is that D is talking about the distance between the points. So it's talking about the rate of change. Sometimes we show that on a graph by going up and over, up and over, up and over, right? So that's kind of what we're seeing here in choice D, is that increase per year. However, C is more just talking about what is the value, the y coordinate of each of these points. Well, it's much, much greater than 3.39 billion, so this doesn't really make sense. If that's confusing for you, yeah, that's the whole point. It's meant to be confusing. They made choice C sound really, really good, hoping that you would pick it and not look at choice D. There's no coincidence here that choice C is pretty good and comes before the actual right answer. They're hoping that you're lazy and that you don't actually read all the choices. You can't do that. We know that the SAT is trying to trick us that way, so we can't cut corners like that. We need to be thorough. And if we've studied and we're familiar with the way the SAT asks about slopes and intercepts and lines, choice D is much, much better. It has the word we're looking for, the word that we expected, so we should be pretty confident picking that. So notice, too, the complex story almost didn't matter at all. It was much more about the simple thing, the basic thing that we know for lots of different questions, y equals mx plus b. That's the most important formula on the SAT. Make sure you know it inside and out.